And this is Wally B, and this is the second episode of the Sovereign Mind Show, brought to you by King Queen Radio by way of Brooklyn Station. Basically, it's the station that brought us all these things. If you need to contact Brooklyn Station or King Queen Radio for advertising purposes, they can be reached at 718-253-7273. Or if you want to reach out to Sister DOBONG for spiritual advice or reading or just a listening ear, 718-253-7273. And before we get started, a quick disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by this show are in no way, shape, or form related to the show itself. These are solely my opinions, my feelings, my thoughts. So we're keeping it on to me. The focus of today's show is going to be information. Information, we all come across it, be it in a digital form, be it in a text form, be it in a verbal form, or in a visual form. But at some point throughout the course of a day, we all deal with information. Now, information are facts provided or learned about something or someone, or more to the point, what is conveyed or represented by a particular arrangement or sequence of things. So let's unpack that a little bit. Information could be, you could be taught it as in school, which is there's an organized curriculum. There's the need created to learn this information based on the entire year academic curriculum. And then there's the information that you gather in just the course of your everyday life, which boils down to experience. There's certain sequence events you see over here. They normally lead to this outcome over there. So it's about putting one and one together to get two. Now, the reason why I want to start this segment off with information is because it occurs to me that and mind you, this isn't all across the board, but the vast majority, the 99%, for the most part, get their information from the 1%. And, well, it can easily be broken down like this. Where does our information come from? So first, let's take some outlets. There's music, all right? There's social media. There's cable, and then there's actual, newspapers. People still actually read those. So the thing about that is the major places that convey this information that the majority of us take in and make decisions based off of, all come from the same sources, more or less. So now, music, we're talking about the biggest labels in music are Sony Music Group, Universal Music Group, and Warner Music Group. Now, under those subsidiary labels, to which most or almost all of our favorite artists are signed to. So basically, these three juggernauts, for the most part, control the content that we take in via music. That is, unless you listen to independent music, which is it's not the mainstream. And I'm sure if you were to scale it, the vast majority of people that's getting music get it from the sources I just named. Right now, let's say newspapers. In 2023 and still currently in 2024, the largest selling newspapers in the city, rather, are the New York Law Journal, the New York Times, New York Post, and the Wall Street Journal. Again, just those four sources, so much information, but only through those four sources. Now, there are independent news outlets, yes. However, the main, I'm going to use that word again, the juggernauts are the ones I just mentioned. Now, cable, on the other hand, you have Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. And then lastly, movies, you have Universal Pictures and Warner Brother Pictures. Now, I'll stop before we get to the social media part. If you'll notice, there's certain reoccurring names. And then when you do your homework and you actually find out who owns these entities, you'll very rarely find one person. What you'll find is a corporation or some other kind of legal entity. Now, a corporation is a legal entity separate and distinct from the owners. For all intents and purposes, a corporation is a living, breathing person. It has a phone number, it has an email address, it has a base of residence. It's just not a flesh and blood person, but it could be charged via its representatives, and it could be disbanded if the corporate veil is pierced and it finds that there's been some kind of chicanery or bad business practices taking place. But the fact that finding out true ownership of these places is so obscure and so difficult speaks volumes. And then we go to social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Again, these are widely used and free to use social media platforms that are owned and operated by billionaires, people in the 1%. And with the power that we give them by even participating on these platforms, any content you put on these things pretty much belongs to them right after you put it up. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the contract is to sign up for a Facebook page is about maybe 10 pages long. No one reads it for the most part. So when you press I accept, you don't really know what you're accepting. And ultimately, unless you've ever tried to get off of it or unfriend people or erase content, you'll find that it's no longer yours to do any of those things. So that's something to consider. Also, TikTok. Funny thing I learned about TikTok not too long ago was that it's owned by China. And that's a loaded piece of knowledge right there. In that, they're not allies of ours. They don't particularly care for us, in my opinion. Their way of governing is far different than ours. Democracy is, it's almost laughable out here. So imagine how it is out there. But the reason I bring China and especially TikTok up is this. If you look at the average feed on a TikTok user in America, you'll see one set of things. Basically, the kind of things that you wouldn't show these images in an educational environment or in any kind of spiritual environment. So that speaks volumes on the kind of content I'm referring to. But now you go to the parent country of this company, TikTok, and look at their algorithm. Look at the information they're showing to their youth out there. It's far different, far more inspirational, far more educational, far more just motivating. And I think that's very interesting because one of the easiest ways to poison the people is by poisoning their mind. And that's what I feel is going on in a very big way right now in this country. I mean, the world at large, but I live here. My priority is here first before anything else. And when I could watch an hour-long news feed and 60% of it is wrapped up in, celebrity mayhem, and then another 20 to 25% is sports. At what point do I actually get the real news, things that are actually going on in the world around me, things that could actually impact and have, dire effects on the well-being of me and my family? Like, when do we actually get that information? The fact of the matter is it won't be given to you. You have to look for it. So I've taken the liberty of just, collecting some, also, before we go any further, data mapping, another concept I was recently educated towards. It's a process of connecting a data field from one source to a data field from another source. So if you go on any search engine, be it Google or if you're on Amazon looking for something, whatever you're doing online, let's say I want plumbing equipment, right? And after searching for that a few times, I'll start to receive emails, advertisements, things like that regarding plumbing materials, things that are unsolicited. I didn't ask for these things. However, there are programs out there, AI, artificial intelligence, that gathers information from what I'm doing, and it tries to cater towards me. I mean, it's not a helpful thing. It's a way of basically commercializing the whole thing. They want to sell me something. They want to sell me a good or a service. But the whole fact of the matter is information that's being collected for the most part without my consent, without my direct consent. However, when you go on a lot of these sites and they speak of things like cookies and stuff like that, in moving forward into that site, it's like you're giving them consent to basically catalog, map, and distribute your information, be it one simple web search or be it an amalgam of things that you're doing on the web. But just know that what you're doing there, very rarely, if ever, is it private or is it private. So keep that in mind. As you're on the internet trying to gather information is being gathered on you. So please be careful with that, people. Now, let's run through some numbers. And these are things, once again, that, like I said, an hour-long news feed, it'll go over a whole myriad of topics, but there's certain things that I feel that people should know about that are always placed out there like that. At least they don't make it apparent easily. So during the Russo-Ukrainian war, casualties thus far, 14,200 to 14,400. That's military and civilian deaths in just an annexation of Crimea alone. All right. And now, fast forward to the Russian invasion, upwards of 500,000 casualties lost across both sides. That's 500,000 people. That's a very large number. And it shows no signs of slowing down. There have been appeals made to both sides for a nonviolent resolution. No one's listening at this point, and the fact that one of them is a nuclear superpower is something that should be really, really concerning. And also the fact that the skirmish is taking place pretty much right on its border, which will have any kind of outside intervention viewed as a direct act of war against Russia. That makes for a very risky situation. And I think people really need to be kept apprised of what's going on with that, because I know it's very easy to consider, it's halfway around the world. What does it have to do with us? But here's the thing. If things were to go south in such a way where a nuclear armament was used, I guarantee you it will affect everyone on this planet, whether you're close to Ukraine or Russia or not. So, I mean, I'm not saying, dwell on this 24/7, but it pays is to keep tabs on how these things are progressing, or whether there's any kind of progress being made as far as a peaceful resolution or a ceasefire. I think it's very important to stay on top of things like that, because they can have deep real world implications later on down the line. So, moving on. What else do we have here? Oh, the Israeli-Palestine conflict / war. At least 34,789 Palestinians killed. Now compare that to the 1,511 Israelis killed. And what we're looking at here is a war with very disproportionate casualty numbers. I can't think of a time in recorded history where such a thing took place and the UN didn't intervene to basically try to come to some kind of body resolution that would bring about an immediate ceasefire and end to all aggressions on both sides, and basically have both parties sit down and talk. Any other time, that kind of difference in casualties would certainly been addressed on a global scale. Now, I heard recently that the prosecutor for the World Court actually sought the arrest and the formal charging of the leaders on both sides of this conflict. And I think that was a very bold move to make. Do I see it happening anytime soon? No, because they're not going to willingly turn themselves into the World Court, which means armed force will have to actually physically go in there and take them, which will essentially turn a 2-front war into a 3-front one. And so that's probably not going to happen, but something clearly does need to happen, because again, look at the numbers. They don't add up. Something's very, very wrong there. And I really do believe, this is not this doesn't impact, this is not the opinion of the station itself, but my opinion alone. I feel America really needs to dial back its support of Israel for all the millions of dollars that we give them annually. I have to ask for what. I don't know what it is we get back, but I have read that at any given time, first of all, especially superpowers, all countries have information assets in other countries. For whatever reason, they say they might be under the guise of diplomats or traveling students, whatever the case may be, they're spies, plain and simple. Israel has twice as many here in America as we do over there. They're supposed to be our allies. So not only are we funding this war for them and acting as a deterrent to keep other people from attacking them, but they're also spying on us. So I really think that our support for them needs to be dialed back tremendously, and even brought back to the table to see exactly whom such a union benefits, because I don't believe it's us. So that's what's going on over there. Okay. 37.9 million people, or 11.5% of the United States population are living below the poverty line. Now, to live below the poverty line means I don't know the exact number for the U.S., but you're living on a minuscule bare minimum amount. Obviously, if you're working all, you're making about minimum wage or less if it's off the books, but most of the numbers are unemployed. And when I consider how much money is being carted overseas to fund conflicts that have nothing to do with us, to prop up puppet regimes that, again, don't impact us in any way other than militarily strategic, which is not something that every citizen has to worry about. When I think of all that money, all those resources being spent overseas, it bothers me tremendously to think that 11.5% of this great country's population are in poverty, for almost starving. Right above that line. I find that very disturbing. And I think come this this 2024 election, we need to give a lot of thought to who we cast our ballot for, and they need to be speaking to these issues. Because again, the richest nation on the planet, militarily the strongest, our infant mortality rate is one of the lowest. It's just too much going on for in our favor in this country for so many of us to be doing so bad. So you have to ask yourself where the priorities lie in the so-called leadership that we elect. You know, contrary to what some people might believe, this is still somewhat of a democracy. You know, I mean, when you bring into, you know, into the argument the whole electoral college aspect, it doesn't quite seem like it, but it's more so of a democracy than any other place on this planet. And especially on the lower levels of government, those people are placed there by our vote. So we need to start paying less attention to the mudslinging that they often do during election time, and pay more attention to their historical track record and what their running points are going to be come this election. And poverty and overall income needs to be high on the list. You know, so that's that. Oh, literacy rate in America. I was actually surprised to see this. On average, 79% of United States adults are literate. That's 21% are illiterate. And 54% have literacy below 6th grade level. Now, again, I find a lot of fault in the public school system and in some of the things that they teach us, like the whole Christopher Columbus discovered America variety of education. I am not a fan of. However, on the most part, I would think that our school system is adequate to the point where we shouldn't have more than half of literate adults reading below the 6th grade level. I find something very wrong with that. I mean, assuming there's no mental or medical conditions causing that, if it's just low aptitude on either the teacher or the student's part, I find there's a very big problem there. And in order to be a well-informed public, you have to be a well-educated public. And I can't stress that enough. It's one of the reasons why, you know, they spend so much money to prop up these digital platforms and anything to pull you away from a book, from actual solid education, anything that will keep you from asking the hard questions and looking at the stone cold data, because numbers don't lie. A politician will, but the numbers don't. So when we're in a situation where it's distraction after distraction after distraction, once again, you have to stop and think about what's on the other side of that. What are they trying to conceal? What are they trying to withhold from us? You know? So that's something that I thought was very interesting. And again, when it's time for me to cast my ballot, I'm gonna take a very, very heavy glance at what these candidates are gonna do in regards to education in this country. You know, so there we are with that. Now let's talk about New York City for a while. NYPD citywide crime stats for the first quarter of this year. So that means it ends March, not counting April and May, but just the first quarter, which is 3 months. That's March. Murder, 82, which is down from 99 last year, same quarter. Rape, 366, which is down from 380 last year, same time, same quarter. Robbery, 3,937, which is down from 3,775 same time last year. And felony assault, 6,390, which is actually up from last year, which is 6,159. Now, mind you, this is only quarterly. And it's a funny thing about the New York crime rate. And matter of fact, the crime rate period in America, it conveniently seems to go down around election time, almost as if these politicians running for public office have invisible superheroes at their disposal that they just let out there to solve crime and lock the bad guys up that aren't available any other time throughout the year or when there's not an election. And because I know that's not the case, and I actually live in the real world, I oftentimes look at these numbers and I take them with a grain of salt. As a person that moves throughout this city on a daily basis, in my commute back and forth to work or this place or that, I see firsthand what's moving in this city. And although I don't witness violent crime every day, I certainly see the potential for it. There's certainly enough mentally ill people walking the streets to create such a situation. When you consider the lackadaisical way in which law enforcement does their job these days, I can easily see how, things could get out of hand. And because these numbers haven't fluctuated in such a dramatic interval, like again, look at murder from this year, 82 first quarter, to last year, 99. Well, that's not that big of a difference. About a dozen, a little bit more. And again, that's just the first quarter. We're in May right now, so I mean, what's happened since then? So know this: every precinct, you as being a taxpayer, they have a right. No, you have a right to request a crime statistic just for that precinct, the precinct you live in. In my case, it could be the 6-3, it could be the 7-0. But as a citizen, as a taxpayer, see, we oftentimes forget these people work for us. Our taxes pay their salary. If there were no taxes, then they would essentially be out of the job. They would just be heavily armed security guards. So a lot of times we're reluctant to ask these questions and hold people to task, hold them accountable for doing their job incorrectly or not doing it at all. And one good way to start is to go online or go in person and get that statistic, get these numbers, and then have a conversation with your Brooklyn borough, with your borough president or with a councilman, someone that you put in office as a taxpayer and as a constituent. You have a right to be heard. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get airtime with that particular politician first try, but your voice will get out there. I'm sure there's an email address you can contact them. They have an office in your borough locally. They oftentimes have multiple ones. If you really want to have your finger on the pulse of things and be able to objectively speak on them, you got to get out there. You got to get in the know, and you got to actually talk to people. Other than that, you're just sitting on the couch complaining, and that doesn't do anyone any good. So, like I said, I don't know how accurate these stats are. It's very convenient that they go down every election year, only to shoot back up afterwards. I don't know. I mean, it's clear because everyone wants to be that politician to say, yeah, I lowered crime. I'm fighting crime. I'm putting the criminals away. Everyone would like to run on that platform, but is it always true? And the answer from, again, what I see is very questionable, very questionable. And again, that's the whole purpose of the Sovereign Mind show. It's a forum for the free exchange of ideas and concepts. There are no right or wrong answers here. As long as respect is given, respect will be received. So, I mean, I say that as far as opinions go, but I'm a very inquisitive person. And I find to get to the root of anything, ask questions. Ask questions. When the target of my questions cease having answers, then their true nature, who and what they really are, actually begins to show. Because if you're standing on business 110% and everything you're saying is 110% true, then you should have no problem answering certain questions. So when in doubt, get out there and question things. Next thing, also for New York, migrant movement. 108,000 migrants have come to New York City since April of 2022. I'm gonna say that number again, 180,000. And that's only New York City, mind you. 65,000 of those are currently in New York City's care. I thought that was a very funny way to word that, but essentially what they're saying is, of these people, they're undocumented, and how they got here, I'm not sure. Probably, obviously not the legal means, because they will be citizens, or at least on the pathway to citizenship, which you're not. Instead, they found their way into our shelter system and on our subways and in our streets, and with a 65,000 figure being cared for by the city, they're being cared for by they're being cared for by taxpayers like you and I. And again, I don't want to come off as insensitive to the plight of what these people are fleeing from in their countries, but need I go back to the statistic of the people living below the poverty line in this country? I find it very odd that we go out of our way to help people that aren't even from here, but can offer no actual assistance to the people that are actually born and raised here. I take huge issue with that. And once again, come 2024, my vote will go towards whoever's working towards rectifying that problem, because it's terrible and it can't be justified. I don't want to come across as being anti-migrant or intolerant or bigoted, nothing like that. It's just I'm a firm believer that you don't comment on someone else's house if yours isn't in order. And right now, America, our house is not in order. We have far too many people below the poverty line, far too many homeless, far too many people with mental illnesses that just aren't being treated properly. And by I mean, not treated properly as in their, how society treats it. I mean, actually being treated, getting the help they need, the medication they need, seeing the professionals they need. We just the number of ways in which we're failing in this regard is so crazy that any time or resource spent helping anything or anyone outside this country, I consider an outrage. Any president or candidate that backs such a tactic, I cannot endorse, and I implore you not to also. And that's how I feel on that topic. I mean, just look at the numbers. It's horrible. It's horrible. I don't want to take care of 10 of them, much like 65,000 of them. I don't get it. Now, I saw a news segment about a week or so back about Mayor Eric Adams, and he's saying that give these people 30 days in the shelter system, and if they haven't worked towards gainful employment or at least taking the steps to get citizenship in a proper fashion, then he's kicking them out. I'm all for that, but now here's the problem. If you kick thousands of people out of a shelter, right? Some of which may have mental issues, some not. You're going to create a congestion problem in the streets, because the fact that they're in shelters in the first place means they don't have anywhere to go. And if you're from New York, then you understand what I'm saying. Those kind of people tend to gravitate, when they kicked out of that situation, they tend to gravitate towards the subway system, parks, public areas like Port Authority, Grand Central, places where law-abiding, tax-paying citizens like myself like to pass through for, in the course of our everyday business. But now we're forced to deal with yet another obstacle. As if the fares aren't high enough, now I have to deal with homeless migrants who have turned the subway car into their condo. Now, I've seen police lock someone up for jumping the turnstile because they were indigent and didn't have the money to pay and they wanted to get home, even when other citizens offered to pay for them. I know this because I've been that person that's offered to pay for them. There's a young kid getting locked up for it, and I didn't want to see him go to jail for something that silly. And here's the thing. Their rationale for such an action, such a brutal, tyrannical action, is because it's costing the city money. Well, as with anything that goes by how do I say this? Okay, well, look at it like this. If there's a homeless pair, I want to keep saying homeless migrant, but homeless anybody on a train taking up 6 seats, with a standard reason that there was a 6 seats that could have been held by actual people that paid the fare. So, and that's one aspect of it. And two, because of their unkemptness and bad hygiene issues, the fact that they had their whole household, which may consist of maybe 4 or 5 shopping carts, taking up space, I've seen situations where half the subway car is rendered useless. Well, how much money is that costing the city? I mean, officers walk up and down the platform all day long, see these people, they don't do anything. So again, where are the priorities at? The one kid hopping a turnstile because he doesn't have any money, or the homeless, whatever he is, who commandeers an entire subway car, have an entire subway car for themselves, and they pay nothing. Again, the priorities in the city are really starting to shift, and I couldn't tell you where they're going or why they're heading in such a bad direction, but it's something that I see every day, and it gives me pause and gives me cause for alarm, because there was a study done a few years back, rather a statistic taken, a poll about people with certain mental health issues. And again, I'm not picking on people with mental health issues. I'm painting a picture here. When we hear mental health issues, there's dozens, possibly even hundreds of different types: depression, schizophrenia, being manic, a lot of different things. But when you isolate the ones that have a propensity towards violence or outbursts of violence, then if you take them and compare it to the amount of people in these homeless shelters, you'll find that a great many of them are afflicted with mental health issues, and that a lot of times the only way they can find stability and have access to their meds are in the shelter system. only for them to be kicked out onto the street to make room for 108,000 migrants, people that aren't even citizens or from this country. If you remember my show the week before last, when I made comment of people in the R building that's in Brooklyn, the local psych ward in whatever county you happen to be from, having to relinquish beds if a sex offender is released from prison. It's along the same lines. It's like there's no care being taken with respect to how mental health issues are treated in the city, this country actually, but specifically we're talking about New York right now. And I think it's a very, very dangerous thing. It puts lives at risk, literally. I mean, if you were to do a Google search right now and look at the last 10 times someone's been pushed on the tracks in the MTA system, each time that the culprit, that the assailant was caught, 9 times out of 10, they have mental health issues or history of it. And even more to the point, a lot of them were actually in mental facilities prior to the crime. Only they were free and on the streets at their liberty to do the crime. So the question becomes, how did they lose their bed? Did they leave willingly or were they kicked out? Do your research on that and you'll be very surprised at the answer. So I implore, people out there, if you're forced to have to use the MTA system, pay attention. Pay attention, please, because not everybody that looks normal is, So what we have here. Oh, another issue needs to be addressed. And again, this is countrywide now. Pregnancy, underage pregnancy. Pregnancy among 15 and 19-year-olds is highest in the U.S. at 57 pregnant per 1,000 women. Let that number sink in for a while. 57 for every 1,000 women. That's atrocious. This is happening to young people at an age where they're barely competent to write their own names properly. I wouldn't trust them to care for my pet cats. But yet, it's a situation where they now have to bring a life into this world. And then you look at the numbers of, households that don't have a father in them, household where no one's employed, households where there are abuse taking place. It all stems from this issue right here, children having children. There was a time when there was a courting ritual. A couple met, they went out for a while, got to know each other, marriage, then children. And that's only after the man or the woman or both have worked for a certain amount of time, amassed some savings, basically built the foundation, stability. But the way this world, especially this state, but this country, but especially this state, the way it works so much is they give women, especially women of color, incentive to not have a man in the house. All you have to do is pop out a kid and they'll pay your rent for you, buy your food for you, give you vouchers for furniture, clothing, and all this nonsense. But there's no structure in the home. And while these women are receiving these benefits, it seems awesome. They don't have to do anything with themselves, which creates a whole other problem altogether. But we'll go back to that another time. But the actual ramifications of what this does won't be prevalent or obvious years down the line when you find that you raise children that have no sense of discipline, no sense of structure, no sense of the nuclear family, where they're ill-equipped to deal with the hardships of the world because they don't have their emotions under control because they were never taught these things. And that's our future. And that's how you get a perpetual cycle of nonsense. Kids having kids, kids raising kids, and then kids killing kids. And that last part doesn't make sense. You just look at the crime rate here, or look at Chicago, for that matter, where you got 14-year-old killers with multiple homicides under their belt. And we listen to their music, it's glorified. And look at the ratings, look at the record sales, the streams, the whole drill movement. I like some of the music, but at some point I had to look at the message and wonder, well, I put it to you like this. I'm not an impressionable youth, so I can listen to something because I like it. I'm not going to emulate or imitate what I listen to. But that the same can't be said for all the youth out there, or even all people out there at the same time. So, and all these things stem from the home. I promise you, it might sound overly simplistic, but it's absolutely true. Having a father in the household makes such a difference. I'm not downplaying the role of mothers, not at all. It's just that is not the point of view I speak from. I was blessed to grow up with both. The mother, from my perspective, is a nurturer and she's a teacher of the lessons that she's qualified to teach. Give you an example. My mother taught me how to cook, how to iron, how to clean, basically how to maintain myself and my environment immaculately. These lessons were taught to me so that no one ever had to do them for me. I'll always be prepared. Those who know me know I'm a very handy person. I can paint, I can do flooring, I can do ceiling work, I can do low voltage work. I learned these skills from my father, amongst other things. A lot of my real world views come from that man. His name is Wallace also. And when I put those are two great teachers I had. Now, when I put those sets of lessons together, it makes her a well-rounded, capable individual. I'm not saying I'm perfect, far from that. But if you see me do something imperfect, know this: I did it on purpose. It was not a mistake. I know there's between right and wrong. I was taught that at a very early age. I know what my moral compass is. I just have a free mind. If I choose to operate outside of that, it's because it's a conscious choice I made, has nothing to do with upbringing. But what can be said for the child that isn't taught these basic lessons? And now they're forced to go to the street and learn from people that haven't been taught them either. That is the only way I could justify a 14-year-old picking up a firearm. Where to get it from in the first place is crazy. But picking up a firearm and discharging it at someone his same age and taking his life with no remorse at all. Between the music, the video games, and other forms of popular culture, these kids have gotten so desensitized to maiming and killing each other that it's almost like a rite of passage for a lot of them. Or they just have no real concept of what it is they're taking. Taking from someone that's actually lost loved ones. Death doesn't truly hit you until someone that you're used to seeing every day, interacting with every day, talking to every day is no longer there. And no matter how many times you call their name or dial their number, they're never coming back. They are gone. And I think that if a lot of these youth really understood that, then they would think twice before making a lot of moves that they're making. Which actually, this wasn't going to be a part of the segment, but a quick segue into the whole Chicago scene again. So again, the whole drill rap scene is a very big thing and generates millions of dollars annually for a lot of young Black entrepreneurs, and for that I tilt my hat to them. Not a fan of the content being pushed on the youth, but I admire and I promote any young Black entrepreneur. That being said, one theme that you'll find in a lot of these videos are displaying of firearms in the video themselves. That's one thing. Back in the day, you might see a 357 Magnum or a 9mm, but now you actually, I've seen military grade weapons in some of these videos. And when I consider the murder rate out there and the reputation of some of these individuals, I have no doubt that it's real. So it begs the question: how do youth, a lot of times preteens or people in their early 20s, let's just say teenagers, so let's leave it there for a second, how do they come across military ordnance in a place where the unemployment rate is so high, where the average person is earning anything is selling drugs or robbing? Where are you getting $1,000? And not to mention that the ammo, which ammunition is very expensive. It just makes me wonder. I mean, call it a conspiracy. I've heard an old timer tell me that the government does it. They drop boxes of guns on the corner, like Old Block and 63rd, stuff like that. They'll drop a box of guns and just let nature take its course. When he first told me that, it was before I had knew too much about the Chicago drill scene, so I took that with a grain of salt. I didn't really believe it. But now I'm actually kind of convinced, because I live in New York, Brooklyn, and it's not easy getting a firearm out here. In fact, with laws being what they are, unless you're down south, it's not easy to get it anywhere. Now we're talking about an urban environment, Chicago. Now, again, I can see regular, run-of-the-mill handguns, but we're talking about assault rifles. There's just things that you expect to see our armed forces equipped with, and these are kids with them. So whatever the problem is out there, or maybe that's one of the 1%. Maybe that's a tactic for population control. Whatever it is very evil. And the fact that it's only being perpetrated against people that look like me, I have huge issue with that. And I implore anyone that can to go out there and try to create a ceasefire. I know it might be sounding on death warrant, but if you have a platform, if you have a voice, if you have followers, if you have people that listen to you, push a message of peace out there and de-escalation. If you reach one person, that's enough. I can't stress that enough because things are really bad. Not just out there all over, but I'm making a point to say that because some of my favorite rappers come from Chicago. One of them actually was killed. And, it's just, I like to think, I like his music. I would like for him to keep living to make more of it. I'm sure these record labels make a lot of money after. Oh, by the way, these record labels take out huge life insurance policy on these artists that conveniently wind up dead. I'm not saying there's a cause and effect situation there. I'm just simply saying it seems odd to me. Now, yeah, it seems like someone's definitely winning. Don't know who they are, but I can tell you who's losing. And that's people that look like you and me. So bear that in mind. And if you have the opportunity to just push a peaceful message out there, I implore you to do so. So I'm gonna take a quick second to shout out our sponsor once again, King Queen Radio, by way of Brooklyn Station. If you're in the need for advertising, this is a great platform in which to do that, and they could be reached at 718-253-7273. Once again, that's 718-253-7273. Or if you'd like to contact Sister DOBONG for some great advice, spiritual reading, or just a little light to guide you down the path that you're on, get you to that next level. Because listen, there's nothing wrong with not having all the answers. I consider myself a very intelligent man, but I do not have all the answers. And rather than remain stagnant, there's nothing wrong with reaching out for those answers, or at least to be pointed in the right direction. And Sister DOBONG is awesome for that. So if you'd like to reach her for a reading or some spiritual advice, she can be reached at 718-253-7273. Now, back to this 2024 election. It's very close, about 7 months away. And let me tell you something. Leading up to the election, there's gonna be a lot of campaigning, a lot of mudslinging, a lot of basically. It will remind you of something of high school. One candidate tearing the other one down, airing this one's dirty laundry, told about this one's spouse. All things that have nothing to do with how to govern this country. Nothing whatsoever. President's sexual preferences or proclivities or his religious beliefs. These things have nothing, even his marital status, has nothing to do with their ability or inability to run this union. But because drama sells and they've gotten us, the sheeple, into this pattern of, whatever's loud noises, bright lights, draw attention. This is what you pay attention to, not the facts. Only the grandstanding, the bright lights and loud sounds. That's just being shoved down our throats rather than actual facts of what these people are actually going to do when they get in office. So on a Democratic ticket, we got Joe Biden running. I don't know whose running mate is going to be. Most likely the same VP he has now, Kamala Harris. And also Marianne Williamson. I don't know who our running mate is going to be at all. But that's for the Democratic Party. And for the Republican Party, right now, we just have Donald Trump. Don't know who his running mate is going to be. Now, I'm not on this platform to tell you who to vote for or to tell you who I'm voting for. But what I will do is I will show you what I'm looking for in a president right now, in a commander-in-chief. I'm looking for someone that can actually stand up to any aggressor we might have. And we're America. We're big, bad America. No one really challenges us. So, and our military might speaks for itself. I mean, we have enough nuclear capability to destroy this planet 10 times over. Our Air Force is second to none. Our Navy is a nightmare for any enemy we might have. So I don't I don't see us coming under threat from any external source anytime soon. And plus, any good commander in chief, when it comes to military situations, will rely on the professionals he puts in place to advise him. Joint chief of staffs, generals, things of that nature. So, and when I'm looking for a president, it isn't so much the willingness to flex our military might, but that has to be there. But also someone who's going to give a long, hard look to our economy. For it to be the richest country on the planet, our poverty level shouldn't be as bad as high as it is. Our homeless rate shouldn't be as high as it is. I want a president that's going to keep American business in America. It's not going to outsource jobs to foreign countries for cheap labor, because not only does the product suffer, but our economy suffers. I recall a situation when Trump was in office. Harley Davidson, American born and bred company, very proud of it, wanted to actually leave the country as far as manufacturing goes. They wanted to have their bikes actually made, I guess, in China and Taiwan or something. And Trump essentially said, well, if you attempt to do that, I'm going to tax you so much to where whatever profit you thought you would have made by the cheaper labor will be completely offset by how much you're going to be paying in taxes. And he stayed. Was that a bully move on his part? Maybe, according to some, but I guarantee you the workers that would have lost their jobs had that company left this country, they weren't complaining. They were not complaining at all. So I want a president that's going to be eyes on the ball when it comes to our economy, because how we feed each other, that's how we provide and how we earn is going to have everything to do with the kind of families we could build, the kind of structure, the kind of foundation we could lay. So that's very important. Also, I'm going to want a president that's going to pay attention to this mental health situation we had, epidemic that we're having in this country right now. Now, again, there's no cure-all. There's no magical button or pill that can be pressed or pill that can be taken that'll just erase that problem altogether. But what should be done is it needs to be called what it is and addressed as such. If a person has violent tendencies when they're off their meds, and after the second time they fall off their meds and they do something violent, lock them up and force feed them their meds. Otherwise, you create a threat for every other law-abiding citizen that just wants to go about their business from day to day. And what should be safety, for us to have the police force we have, the assets and the money that this country has, people should be able to walk the streets feeling safe. And with that situation being what it is, it's just not happening. While we're at it, I believe that the mandatory minimums or the mandatory sentences for sex offenses need to go up tremendously. I'm talking about double digits at least. 20 years for the first offense. You do that, it'll create the kind of incentive needed for these people to either go leave this country or stay in your homes. You don't belong on the streets with that in your mind. Women aren't safe, kids aren't safe. And the fact that isn't being addressed, police, law enforcement, they're a Band-Aid. They come after the fact. All these issues can be addressed beforehand. In fact, I believe there should be a subcommittee, a committee, a law enforcement branch whose task is specifically to keep track of these people, whether they're on probation or parole or not. I'm talking about even decades after they're off, they're periodically checking on them to see what they're up to. Because one thing I've learned, especially from my past mistakes, is this. A robber steals financial gain. But if you give that robber a good enough job or a legal means of making money, he won't rob anymore. The same goes for a drug dealer. The same goes for a burglar. But people that commit those kind of crimes, sex crimes, what they have is a sickness. There's no amount of money, no amount of freedom, no amount of counseling can fix that in most cases, my belief. So there has to be a way to isolate them and deal with them as such. And that might sound harsh, but until you've had a family member or a friend that's fallen victim to that, then you're not really going to understand what I'm saying. So I hope that never happens to you, but just know that I have a reason of feeling the way I feel on that topic. So also, a president that's going to interact with these other world leaders, build a dialogue that actually makes sense. Now we're just throwing money at them, because a lot of our presidents actually feel like I would think that being the commander-in-chief of the most powerful nation on the planet should buy you all the political capital and clout that you need. But then when you have these presidents throwing millions upon millions of dollars at these countries that don't even make good allies, I have to ask myself, what are you buying with our money? And I say our money because it's not coming out of their bank account. It's coming from my taxpayer dollars. So what are you buying with our money? Like, I'll tell you what, the war between Russia and Ukraine, I mean, it's a very complex situation. So I don't want to overly simplify it, but I will tell you this. If Biden, if as a whole, if America would have went on record and said we have no intentions now or ever of making the Ukraine a part of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, then I don't think Putin would have felt compelled to invade. Now, the problem with Ukraine, and this is from Vladimir Putin's standpoint, the problem with Ukraine becoming a member of NATO is once you're a NATO member, then by law, by right, NATO can store its weapons in your country. Well, if you happen to look at a map, then you'll see the close proximity between Ukraine and the Kremlin. If I'm not mistaken, it'll take a missile about 15 minutes to get from Ukraine to the Kremlin. Now, if I were Vladimir Putin, there's no way I allow anybody that isn't my ally to put ICBMs, that's intercontinental ballistic missiles, on my doorstep. So, if I'm being honest, I don't blame him for this war. I don't. Were there more diplomatic conversations that could have taken place prior? Yeah. And he made his point very clear. It's just, it was a one-sided conversation. And frankly, the conversation was had with the wrong president, my opinion. Because if you were to ask me if when Trump was in office, if he had any intention on making or at least endorsing Ukraine to be a member of NATO, his answer would have been emphatically no. It doesn't benefit us enough, and on the one hand, and it causes too much. It's just too much potential for strife on the other side. It's just we don't have a big enough dog in the fight, and it just wasn't a smart move. So he leaves office, and this guy Biden comes in, and the same with his endorsement of Taiwan. I get you want to spread democracy everywhere on the planet, as if we really lead the pack in the best leadership forms or the best way, because there are other countries that are far less free than us with a far lower crime rate, and they can actually walk their streets safely. So there's something to be said for having too much freedom, but that's neither here nor there. It's just you let this guy in office, and he wants to go so far to seem all inclusive to the point where you're making enemies where we really don't need them. You're risking beefing with you're risking a conflict with Russia to befriend Ukraine. Makes no sense. Say that with Taiwan, you're formally actually, Trump made this mistake when he was elected, and you get the calls, congratulations, blah blah blah. I believe the president of Taiwan called him, and he accepted the call and accepted the thanks and referred to them as the president of Taiwan. And China took offense to that due to the one China rule, which is that there's only, that in essence, Taiwan is a part of China and only one China to be recognized. So, I mean, that seems like a very small thing to us over here. But where it becomes problematic is if China decides, they say, you know what, to hell with it, we're going in there, we're taking Taiwan back. They could do it easily. They could do it so easily. Only for America to lend some kind of aid to Taiwan because we're an ally or a friend of theirs. That friendship, that alliance is not on paper. That's strictly by handshake alone. And what does it gain us? But a potential conflict with the third largest superpower on the planet. Russia being the second, us being the first. So all across the board, I see three big dragons about to fight over two small mice. It doesn't seem smart, and we need someone in office that understands that above all else, North America is a continent, the United States of America is a corporation, it's a business, okay? Commerce, gross national product, all right? We supply and demand, we had to build. That right there, you had to be cognizant of that sort of thing. And a career politician really isn't. They're just accustomed to just kissing the right ass at the right time to get the right votes. I see that's what they do. They run on a platform of doing one thing, only get elected and do nothing of the sort. At least Trump started the wall. They didn't let him finish it, but he started it, and he's made no secret that if elected, he's gonna do a lot. He's gonna do a mass deportation. Mass deportation, and I'm 110% behind that. See, I have no problem with a person coming to this country, wanting to find work, build a family, and just contribute to our society. I have no problem with that. I feel, one, they should go through the right channels. If I can't go to your country and thrive the way you do it here, with no knowledge of your native language, with no relatives there, no assets, no money, just a clothes on my back, you come here, you get free room and board, you get money, you get all these resources that we just throw at these people. But when I go to their country, I may not survive a night. That isn't fair. I know life isn't fair, but in life, there are most wrongs you cannot right. But this is one of them that we actually can. We need to do the right thing in 2024, November, to make sure this gets rectified, because it's just there's a finite amount of resources on this planet. It's the layman that believes that things are unlimited. Other than problems, nothing's unlimited. So they only but so many jobs, they only but so many beds, they only but so many counselors, but only but so much of anything. And the people that work here, that have thrived here, that work hard here their whole lives, generationally, they deserve first crack at everything because they've been here for it. You don't get off some boat or whatever inner tube you floating here on just to, get things that people that have actually worked hard here don't have. I think that's wrong, and someone needs to get put in office to deal with that, to address that. And also, one thing I find when there's a huge demand of a certain service, there's certain criteria, qualifying criteria that are suspended. For instance, when he inevitably is reelected, there's going to be a huge call for Border Patrol and ICE agents, and I feel that there should be certain tweaks made to the overall qualification of that job. For instance, most people would have been barred due to felony convictions. I believe if you haven't been convicted of a felony in the last 10 years, you should have a right. You should have a legitimate chance at that job. I really believe so. I think it will grant the person a lot of experience. It will grant them ability to travel, take care of their family, and we're cleaning up a very bad mess at the same time. I call that a win-win. Overall, and anyone that might disagree with me on this or say what I'm saying is wrong, I have a question. Do you lock your door at night when you go to sleep? Do you lock your door? If the answer is yes, and I ask you why. To protect your family, your belongings. The same way we need a secure home, the same way you need a secure home, we need a secure border. Bottom line. Because if 100 people try to cross the border illegally, if 99 of them are law-abiding and hardworking, but one of them are a serial killer, a rapist, a gang member, whatever, I think it's fully justified to keep the whole 100 out, just on the off chance that one person gets in and wreaks havoc. I won't give one American life for 100 of theirs when I'm an American living in America. It doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. And it's not being mean, it's not being callous, it's not being bigoted, it's being honest. It's just now you say something like that, it's not politically correct. Then, that I get all these, I get called these nasty names. But the reality of it is, us not taking care of our home is the main reason why our home is so sloppy right now. It's why you can't walk down the street without seeing some homeless person with a sign, or it's why women walk around half naked all the time. It's why all our youth are gun-toting and gang-banging. It's because we're not taking care of home and we're caring about everything and everyone else except for what's important. And I think that's wrong. And as above, so below. What takes place on a macro takes place on a micro. The same problem I just said, it takes place in the home too. Parents or parent too preoccupied with whatever it is they're doing, their life, their hobby, their movies, their music, whatever, that they're not taking care of the biggest asset this country has, which is the youth. Seeing to their education, seeing to their safety and their upbringing. Well, folks, that's all I have for tonight. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show. I certainly enjoyed being here, and I look forward to talking to y'all next week. Once again, it's the Sovereign Mind Show hosted by Wally B, brought to you by King Queen Radio by way of Brooklyn Station. Have a good night.
Good deal. Thank you very much, Wally. That was an excellent show. Enjoyed it, everybody. My show will start. Give me about 15 minutes to set up so we don't get no more feedback loops. So enjoy the music in between while I do the setup and transfer over real quick. Thank you very much.